Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. In this video, I'm going to give you 29 new tips in Marathon to make sure you never die again. This is going to be tactical stuff. It's going to help you take better gunfights. And it's just general knowledge from my 100+ hours in the game already. Yeah, I've been grinding. So if you're excited, drop a like on the video and let's get started.
To begin with, I'm sure you already are aware that if you ping enemies before you engage in a gunfight, you can look at the ping you've created and see what shields that enemy has. This obviously applies to the bots in the game, but it also applies to players, and there are upgrades in the game's skill tree so that you can increase the duration of that ping. And there are also lots of cores that you can use that mean that you ping enemies when you take damage or when you break shields or all sorts of things. Next, if you've been playing a lot of Rook, you've probably noticed that some Rooks are absolutely bloodthirsty, but sometimes you can form a Rook alliance. And this is great, right? It's lovely. You just got to sort of teabag a little bit with your knife out, and a lot of the time, the enemy Rook will become the friendly Rook. But one thing I've done in a couple of Rook matches is when this happens, if I go to a guarded exfil with another Rook, both of us will pop our disguises at the exact same time. That way, the UESC bots spawn in, but they don't see me or my friend, and then they kind of act like extra cover to protect me and my friend from any other runners that may end up being in the match. So use that disguise to your advantage to make the UESC bots work for you. Next, I saw a lot of debate about this when the game came out, whether or not there's ways to make the revive go faster. I'm sure you know that there are ways to make it faster in the game's skill tree, so that's great and all, but what else can you do to improve your revive speed?
You might have heard that if multiple people revive their teammate at once, it will make the revive speed faster. However, in my experience and my testing, this is not the case. What's actually going to happen is the game is just going to prioritize the revive speed of whoever picked up the revive first. So if you've got two people reviving a teammate and one of them has slower revive speed than the other because that person is less far in their upgrade tree, they should just stay away from the revive and fully leave it to the person that has the faster revive speed in their upgrades.
And you can also get multiple revives with the Triage ult at once. You've got two arms that are going to fire here, and so if you see both of your teammates are down, shoot ropes at both of them, and they'll both get up really quickly. Another revive-related tip here is if there's a Rook that you've made friends with who's sadly been downed, you can drop that Rook a self-revive, and the Rook can then grab it from the ground, use it, and get back on their feet, which is a great way to maintain friendships with unfamiliar runners. Next, a couple of movement tips to help you get out of gunfights easier. If you're playing as Thief, your grapple does not need to attach to a surface. It kind of works like the old Spider-Man games where you can just into midair and then start swinging and you'll be completely fine. Also, you may not be aware that sliding into a vent or into glass will break it and allow you to pass through. So you can use that instead of having to crouch up to it and then knife it and then start waddling your way in. Another tip is that if you're trying to mantle up to surfaces, you're going to want to look up at the ledge that you're trying to get onto and hold your spacebar or hold your jump button. And that's going to make it much more likely that you actually clamber all the way up. However, you may not be aware of the fact that different runners have different agility stats at base, and while those can be upgraded in the game's skill tree, it's still different base stats. And so different runners are able to make different jumps, and sometimes you're just hard-coded to be fat, bro. But there is one antidote to this. Yes, it's true, Retatrutide is in Marathon, but its name in this game is the Humble Cardio Kick. And I see a lot of people use these kind of wrong, not gonna lie. What a lot of people do is they'll be like, okay, I've got to get across the map, so I'm gonna cardio kick so I can run faster. But you should use it slightly differently. Instead, you should sprint so that your heat meter is like basically maxed out, and then you should pop your cardio kick. And the reason being, the cardio kick, when used, is gonna zero out your sprint meter, so your heat is gonna go back to 0, and then you can do a full sprint, having just done a full sprint, and you'll be just fine, and it will give you more heat capacity as well. And another tip is to make sure that whenever you're doing so, you're giving them to your triage, and your triage is heal botting the other players on your team, and then they're the one popping consumables, because then, so long as the teammates are heal botted, the consumable will also apply to both of the teammates. It's not the full effect of it, But still, it's extremely effective if you want to share antivirus, for example, and you're about to do a series of lockdowns. Just have your triage pop the antivirus, and then you only need one for 3 players. Also, did you know the bubble shield can protect against lightning strikes? So if you've got lightning on your location and you need to stick a revive out, whack a bubble shield down and you'll be just fine. Next, if you've been having trouble exfilling, especially on Outpost, and you've maybe been trying that final exfil but having a bit of bother with it because there's just a lot of other runners contesting for that same point, there's one sneaky thing that you could try, and I first saw this done by Painter, but since then it seems to have spread across a little bit more of the community. You're going to play as Assassin, and when the final exfil spawns, it will spawn around about here. What you're going to do is you're going to wait on the roof above the final exfil, and then because when Assassin pops the smoke slam ability, you won't take any fall damage, you can just stay on the roof and then wait for the final exfil timer to be at like 3 to 5 seconds, and then smoke slam onto the exfil point. You'll create a load of smoke, obviously, and you won't take any fall damage, and it'll be the end of the match, so you can just sneak in there and get more consistent exfils. Just be aware of the fact that because I'm mentioning this in this video here, other people might be aware of that as a spot, and so you'll need to avoid those players now. Next, if you've been struggling against assassins, and I know some people really find their invis very annoying, you should be playing as Thief. The reason being, Thief's visor is a hard counter to Assassin. And this isn't because of the other amazing Thief abilities, like being able to see what's in lockboxes before you even open them. It's not that. And it's also not the bird braining ability where you can literally confuse bots with your visor and stunlock them so they do nothing while you are still looking at them. It's incredibly powerful. And you can do that on turrets as well. Like, it's so useful for stealthing as well, but it's none of those things, okay? What it is that when other players are invis and when they're in smoke, you can see them through the smoke and through the invis using your visor. So you can basically just completely hard counter any sneaky plays any other assassins are trying to make. Now, speaking of sneaky plays, there are a few things in this game that are phenomenal for being more sneaky and helping you avoid damage or even detection from other teams if you plan effectively. One of my favorites of all of these is the signal jammer. This thing is something that you can find all over the world. Like, you'll find plenty of them, but hardly anyone uses them. And it really surprises me because did you know that signal jammers hide you from claymores? Jammer also hides you from TADs. So if you're creeping around and you know you're in a TAD location, pop your signal jammer, and it will hide you from thermal scopes. And we all know how annoying those thermals have been, so use your signal jammer. Similarly, when you're out in the world, if you're not finding claymores, but you're instead finding toxic plants, you might need to go past one to get to where you need to go. You don't have to take the damage in order to trigger it. You can actually just stay away from it, shoot the plant, it will fart into the air, the fart will dissipate, and then you'll have about 10 seconds where you can go and loot or do whatever you need to do before the plant regenerates and then pops again. So use that to your advantage. Next, if you have a Recon on your team, you need to be paying attention to the fact that if you are pinged as Recon, it alerts you. This is a passive permanent Recon ability, and it's so useful because if an enemy team is scouting and they can't quite tell who they're looking at, and they're spam pinging, and they ping you, you know that you're in their line of sight. It's instant information for you. And also, obviously, if you finish downed runners as Recon, it will ping their teammates, and that's a fantastic way to know if their teammates are still alive, or if you've wiped a full squad. And while we're on the topic of Recon tips, I suppose, after you break a shield as Recon, you're gonna see enemy footsteps for a good while afterwards, and you can use that to track them down. It's like 30 seconds or something. So use that to your advantage, and your team will thank you. Next, something I see people do all the time in this game is they down an enemy runner and then they immediately go for the finisher. And I get it, it's tempting because finishing a downed runner grants you Shield Siphon, and Shield Siphon recharges your shields, which is amazing. But the problem is, and the thing that a lot of people don't think about, is that when you're downed, you can obviously still ping people. So what's probably happened is you've downed someone, they've immediately pinged you, so the enemy team now knows exactly where you are. Then, if you start finishing them, you're a sitting duck and you have a ping on your head. And on top of that, let's say you don't get immediately killed, you finish that player off, but then from the body bag on the ground, you can still see where someone runs off afterwards some of the time. And so let's say you finish someone near a staircase and then you run down the staircase after they're dead. They, as the killed player, could still see where you went. So even if the ping's gone, they could give that information to their team on voice chat, and then you're still screwed. So it's often worth taking a second to consider, am I actually safe to get the finish here? Is it worth getting the shield restore in exchange for giving the enemy team information about where I am for a good 6 or 7 seconds minimum? When obviously your alternative option is to not be rooted in place and to instead just shoot them or whack a grenade on them or something to take them out from afar while you go and heal up your shields manually and you reposition. Like, that might be a lot safer, and I see so many people make that mistake, so be wary about it. Another pro tip a lot of people miss in Marathon is that if you're playing against a Recon and you get downed, because of the fact that that Recon will get pings on your teammates if they finish you, you should try to finish yourself on your own before the Recon can get to you if you can manage it. Obviously, sometimes it's not possible, the timer takes a second to do it, but just try and keep that in mind that if there's a Recon sprinting towards you across the world, finish yourself off, and that will prevent them from gathering information about your remaining teammates. Next, make sure you're using grenades in this game. They're so powerful, and not a lot of people are really leaning into their actual utility. Smoke grenades are an obvious one. They de-aggro you from the UESC, so you can jump into the smoke and then just start shooting bots, and they're going to be none the wiser, which is really useful, especially also for taking down bosses. And if you've got a thermal, you can just sit in the smoke and then just beam the boss, and you're going to be chilling. And also, if you're in the middle of a gunfight and you need to loot a body bag or something, throw a smoke, and then all the bots around you are going to leave you alone. So those are some of the most effective grenades in the game, but some others are really slept on. One is the bubble shield I mentioned earlier. It's phenomenal. It completely changes a fight. If you always have one in your backpack, it'll mean that if you have a downed player out in the open, oh, they're not out in the open anymore if you can throw a bubble shield at them. And yes, the enemy team can break the bubble shield by doing enough damage to it, but it's quite difficult to do so, and so it's generally fairly reliable, I would say, to throw one of those down and get a quick res. But another grenade that not a lot of people are aware of is the flechette grenade. This thing heals you when it damages enemy players, and so it's basically giving you a bit of lifesteal in the middle of a fight, which can be really nice if you're trying to sort of charge in and get that first kill and start an engagement off. The cool thing about the flechette also is that it will hover in place when it explodes if it doesn't have an enemy to attract to in the immediate vicinity. So you can kind of pre-throw it a few seconds before you think an enemy is going to come through a given corridor or something, and it will essentially act like a claymore kind of by waiting for them until they get there. Next, here's a tip for your out-of-game experience, things to be looking for based on the menu. Bartering obviously is massive in this game, and because there's a lot of real credit sinks, it's quite nice sometimes to just be able to exchange materials for items, and spark leaves are a great example of this, because you can find them all over the place in multiple maps, and when you grab them, they'll stack in one single slot, and you can exchange those for heals. So instead of having to buy your heals and be really expensive every single time, just exchange your spark leaves and you'll get a bunch of heals for free. Also, on the topic of things that you can do outside the game, implants make a big difference to not just your abilities, like it's not just actions and new interactions that are added from the implants, but actually they make a massive difference to your stats. And a lot of people don't pay any attention to this, but it's huge. So when you're looking at your implant selection, don't just think, oh, is this a cool ability that I'm getting access to? No. Think about, oh, my runner's too fat and my heat capacity is too low. Maybe I want to try to spec into things that are going to make me more agile, or maybe I want to spec into other stats. The world is your oyster once you start min-maxing your stats in this game, and the implants are a great way to begin doing that. Next, when you're in a match, there are certain things that are going to be more easy to find in certain places. So, for example, if you're looking for medical cabinets, or you're just looking for ammo caches and things like that, those are more frequently going to be found on the outside edges of all the maps. And this can be useful when you're doing contracts, if you need to find med cabinets, for example, or it could be useful if you just want to stack up on a load of heals, for instance. But an even better way to stack up on heals is to recognize the fact that in the game, you can only stack 3 regular shield patch kits and 3 regular shield charges in a slot before it then starts filling up another slot in your backpack, right? Which means that they can end up taking quite a lot of space, but the advanced shield charges and advanced patch kits stack up to 6. So they are more space efficient as well as being better at healing. So keep that in mind. Also, when you're doing all of this looting, bear in mind that containers that have already been looted will visibly show that. So you can use that to understand whether there are other players in your area there to cause you some trouble. And something that I don't see enough triages doing is, like I said, when you use consumables, if you've got medbots on your teammates, you can share those consumable actions with them. But if you see consumables in the wild in a bag that you're not going to take and put in your backpack, you can just hold the interact key, which is X by default on keyboard, to use it in place, and then you pop the consumable instantly instead of scavenging it into your bag, and your teammates will get the benefits. So that can be quite a nice thing to do to give your team a little boost as well. Next, speaking of triage, one of the coolest things I've learned about this character is when you have heal bots available to throw, you can see them physically on Triage's knees. So your teammates can look at you, see your knees, and go, oh, he doesn't have any heal bots available, so I'm not going to nag him and ask for them. Or they look at your knees, see 2 heal bots, see that you've maybe got another bot floating around you, and go, oh, I could do with a heal bot, please, because they know that it's up. It's going to save you so many annoying conversations of saying again and again, I don't have one, for the love of God. Also, did you know that the heal bots will prevent you from bleeding out? So if you're downed as any runner, it doesn't matter who you are, but any runner with a heal bot on you, it will basically bleed through the heal bot's health bar before your bleed out timer actually begins, which can be really nice for scooting away into cover. So make sure you've got heal bots on your friends at all times. Next, you might wonder whether a certain gunfight is worth taking or not, and some of those decisions can sometimes be quite hard to make. But did you know that your ammo type could actually be the distinguishing factor on whether or not you should be engaging? For example, the MIPS rounds in this game on snipers and shotguns seem like they'd be very effective on everything, right? Because those are such powerful weapons. But did you know they're more effective on runners specifically? And this means that if you're only using MIPS on UESC bots, and that's the main thing you're going to be fighting, you're maybe wasting your ammo a little bit. And that stuff is precious. Instead, prioritize using heavy rounds on enemy UESC bots. Reason being, those heavy rounds stagger and stun the bots, where light rounds and other rounds do not. Now, on the topic of these sorts of gunfights, if you're going to engage in a gunfight, let's say you're using an LMG, a lot of people don't realize LMGs in this game have an entire slot dedicated to shield mods. So if you press Z on your keyboard, you will pull up a shield on your LMG. And if you're crouching, that shield covers a good amount of your body. It's from about your sort of mid-thigh up. And especially if you're fighting a load of bots, they're not that accurate, so that can help prevent you from taking a decent amount of damage. And then also, whenever your gun is low on ammo, you don't have to be looking at the actual ammo counter to understand how close it is to needing a reload, because there's a bar under the ammo counter which drains as the ammo in your mag depletes. And then when you reload, it's going to fill back up again. So that's another part of the UI that gives you a bit more information about the gun you're using. Next, there's a ton of ways to use sound in this game to understand what's happening in a gunfight and what's happening away from you in other gunfights and whether or not you should engage in those fights. For example, you can hear triage heal bots being thrown really loudly. So be aware of the fact that if you're sneaking towards an enemy team and you've got a bot available and you want to throw it, maybe it's a good idea to hold back until the gunfight begins and then wait for a sort of second in the action to toss your bots out, because otherwise it's going to blow your cover in advance. Similarly, the grapple on Thief, it's another one where you might want to use it to engage, but bear in mind, it does make sound. And another thing that makes loads of sound is the player dying sound. I'm not talking about just being knocked, but I'm talking about going from down but not out to fully dead. You can hear that from an extended distance, and that can be really useful information for understanding when it's time to third-party an enemy fight. But one of my favorite third-party tips is to listen out for this sound. This is what you will hear when an enemy team or your team activate a keycard door somewhere in the map. So it's a really good idea to have a kind of mental map and start to learn all of the keycard door spawns, and then when you hear one of these sounds, you know where you need to start running to, and they're going to be looting with their backs turned, and you'll be able to take them out really easily and get a free keycard room out of it as well. So that's really worth listening out for. Next, speaking of engaging in gunfights, one of the best feelings in the world in this game is to put a claymore on a thief drone and use that to basically predator missile an enemy unsuspecting team. It's insanely effective, but a mistake that I see often happening is you'll get teams that get too enthusiastic about this and they forget the fact that if you're flying your drone around, your runner shell is exposed. And so you need your teammates to watch your shell to make sure that you're safe, or you need to just make sure that you're in a secure position before you do it. Now, I'm sure you've seen the clip of me having a load of $20,000 and $10,000 gear stolen out of my bag as I was exfilling. I'm literally frozen in the exfil and a thief drone is stealing stuff out of my bag, right? It's really dangerous. If you've got a recon, do a ping immediately when you're about to go in the exfil, and that will at least let you know if there's a thief in operating distance that is not signal jammed, and that might help you prevent any annoying drones. Another thing that you can do is when you're waiting for that countdown timer, if you do see a drone, immediately get all of your team and yourself out of the exfil circle. The timer will reset. It'll mean that the drone won't be able to sneakily grab anything. You'll be able to shoot the drone, pick up any items off the floor that it stole from you, and then restart your exfil as normal. So that was a whole load of tips that hopefully makes your combat in this game a little easier. And if it was a good list in your eyes, I'd love for you to drop a like on the video and also leave a comment with any other tips that you'd like me to highlight in future marathon videos so we can all keep learning this game together. I'm putting tons of time into all of these tips vids, and the love on them so far has been really appreciated. So keep those tip suggestions coming, subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and I'll link it on screen when it's up. I'll see you there. Bye for now.